What if one of the most valuable rocks you'll ever see is a rock you would never bother picking up? It may sound impossible, but some extraordinary gemstones have been ignored, misidentified, or completely overlooked simply because they didn't look valuable. Some resembled broken glass, others looked like rusty gravel, fossil fragments, or ordinary stones scattered across the ground. Yet hidden inside these unlikely rocks are stories of rarity, discovery, and astonishing value. In today's countdown, you'll discover 10 ugly-looking rocks that fooled collectors, prospectors, and ordinary people alike, and learn the clues that reveal what most people miss. But as the list unfolds, a surprising pattern begins to emerge. The biggest mistake was never failing to find something rare. It was failing to recognize it. And no stone proves that lesson better than number 10, a strange green rock that many people would mistake for worthless glass. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Number 10. Moldavite. Imagine walking through a freshly plowed field and spotting what looks like a broken piece of green bottle glass. Most people wouldn't stop. Some might kick it aside. Others wouldn't even notice it. And yet, under the right circumstances, that strange green fragment could be one of the most fascinating gemstone materials on Earth. This is Moldavite, and few stones prove the central idea of this countdown better. Because Moldavite doesn't look valuable. It doesn't resemble a diamond. It doesn't sparkle like a sapphire. It doesn't display the rich color of an emerald. In fact, many first-time collectors mistake it for ordinary glass. That mistake is completely understandable. Moldavite is rough, uneven, and often covered with natural pits and grooves that make it appear damaged rather than precious. But appearances can be incredibly misleading. About 15 million years ago, a massive meteorite slammed into what is now the Czech Republic. The impact was so powerful that surrounding rock instantly melted and was blasted high into the atmosphere. As the molten material cooled and fell back to Earth, it formed a rare natural glass, unlike almost anything else on the planet. That glass became Moldavite. In other words, every genuine Moldavite specimen is connected to a cosmic collision that occurred millions of years before humans existed. And that's exactly why collectors find it so compelling. They're not simply buying a green stone, they're buying a piece of an ancient impact event, a fragment of Earth's violent geological history. Today, high-quality Moldavite specimens can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, especially as supplies become harder to obtain. So how can you recognize it? Look for a natural olive green to bottle green color. Notice the irregular surface texture. Look for tiny etched grooves and natural sculpting that appear almost melted. And be cautious of perfectly smooth pieces, which are often imitations. The irony is almost unbelievable. The very characteristics that make Moldavite valuable are the same characteristics that cause people to ignore it. Most people expect treasure to look like treasure. Moldavite reminds us that nature rarely follows human expectations. Sometimes the difference between a worthless-looking rock and a highly sought-after collectible is not appearance, it's knowledge. And if Moldavite is overlooked because it looks too much like broken glass, the next stone faces the opposite problem entirely. People ignore it because it looks too much like an ordinary rock. Number 9. Fire agate. Imagine walking through a desert wash after a rainstorm. The ground is covered with stones. Brown stones, gray stones, rust-colored stones. Nothing appears unusual, nothing appears valuable, and that's exactly why fire agate is so often overlooked. At first glance, it looks almost disappointingly ordinary. Many pieces resemble chunks of rusty gravel. Others look like weathered volcanic rock. Some appear so unremarkable that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick them up. Yet hidden inside certain specimens is one of the most extraordinary visual effects found in the gemstone world. The reveal happens when light strikes the stone at just the right angle. Suddenly, flashes of gold ignite beneath the surface. Then green, then orange, then deep red. The colors don't simply reflect light. They seem to burn from within, almost like tiny flames trapped inside solid rock. It's a transformation so dramatic that many first-time collectors struggle to believe they're looking at the same stone. And that's what makes fire agate so fascinating. Unlike many gemstones that announce their beauty immediately, fire agate hides it. The outer surface often looks rough and unattractive, sometimes ugly, sometimes completely forgettable. But beneath that ordinary exterior are thin layers of iron oxide formed millions of years ago under highly specific volcanic conditions. Those layers create the fiery flashes that give the stone its name. And because the effect is hidden below the surface, countless pieces have been ignored by people who never realized what they were seeing. For rock hunters, fire agate offers an important clue. Look for rough brown or reddish material in volcanic desert regions. Pay close attention to stones that display small flashes of color when rotated under direct sunlight. Even a tiny glimpse of iridescence can signal something far more valuable hiding underneath. That's one reason experienced collectors often move more slowly than everyone else. They know remarkable discoveries rarely advertise themselves. Sometimes they reveal themselves only for a split second, only under the right light, only to someone paying attention. And if fire agate hides its value beneath a rough exterior, the next stone hides its secret in an entirely different way. Because unlike fire agate, the colors are always there. Most people simply can't see them until the stone comes alive in their hands. Number 8. Labradorite. How many extraordinary things have people ignored simply because they didn't know what they were looking at? It's an uncomfortable question, because unlike a hidden treasure buried underground, some remarkable discoveries sit directly in front of us, visible, exposed, completely unobstructed, and yet they still go unnoticed. Few gemstones demonstrate that idea better than labradorite. At first glance, there is almost nothing impressive about it. Many specimens appear dull gray. Some look dark and lifeless. Others resemble ordinary chunks of weathered stone collected from a roadside ditch. Placed beside a diamond, sapphire, or emerald, labradorite would rarely attract attention. Most people would glance at it once and move on. And that's exactly what makes the next moment so surprising. Tilt the stone slightly, just a few degrees. Suddenly, an electric flash of blue appears. Move it again. Now green, then gold, sometimes violet. Entire sections of the stone seem to ignite from within. Not because the colors suddenly appeared, because they were there all along. This phenomenon is known as labradorescence, one of the most spectacular optical effects found in the gemstone world. Tiny internal structures inside the stone interact with light in a way that produces brilliant flashes of color, seemingly suspended beneath the surface. The effect can be so dramatic that first-time observers often assume they are looking at a completely different specimen, but they aren't. The stone never changed. The light changed. The viewing angle changed. And suddenly something ordinary became extraordinary. That's one reason labradorite continues to fascinate collectors. Not because it's among the most expensive gemstones, not because it's among the rarest, but because it reveals how easily the eye can be fooled. Or more accurately, how easily the brain can overlook something that doesn't match its expectations. For rock hunters, labradorite offers several clues. Look for gray, dark gray, or charcoal-colored stones. Pay close attention to flat surfaces and broken edges. Rotate the specimen slowly under direct sunlight. If vivid flashes of blue, green, gold, or violet suddenly appear beneath the surface, you may have found something worth investigating further. And that's where labradorite becomes more than just a gemstone. It becomes a reminder. Some discoveries don't happen because something new is found. They happen because someone finally sees what was there all along. But if labradorite hides its beauty until the light strikes at the perfect angle, the next gemstone hides something even more extraordinary. Because unlike labradorite, its brilliance isn't merely ancient. It once belonged to a living creature that swam through Earth's oceans millions of years before humans existed. Number 7. Ammolite. Most gemstones begin as minerals. Ammolite began as a living creature. Long before humans existed, long before mammoths walked the earth, and even before the dinosaurs disappeared, giant marine animals called ammonites drifted through ancient oceans that once covered large parts of North America. They weren't rare, they weren't powerful, and at the time there was nothing remarkable about them. They were simply part of everyday life in a world that no longer exists. Then everything changed. When these creatures died, their spiral shells sank to the seafloor. Layer after layer of sediment slowly buried them. Years became centuries, Centuries became millions of years. And deep beneath the earth, something extraordinary began to happen. Under a rare combination of pressure, minerals, and geological conditions, portions of those ancient shells transformed, not into ordinary fossils, into gemstone material. The result was Ammolite, one of the few gemstones on Earth that was once part of a living animal. And that's what makes the first encounter with Ammolite so unforgettable. At first glance, many specimens resemble broken shell fragments. Some look like pieces of fossilized debris. Others appear more suitable for a museum drawer than a jewelry collection. Then the colors appear. Brilliant red, electric green, deep blue, gold, violet. Entire sections of the fossils seem to glow with colors that rival some of the world's most celebrated gemstones. Yet unlike most gemstones, Ammolite carries two stories at the same time. One is geological, the other is biological. Collectors aren't simply looking at a colorful stone. They're looking at the preserved remains of a creature that swam through ancient seas roughly 70 million years ago. That perspective changes everything. Suddenly, the object in your hand is no longer just a gemstone. It's a survivor, a fragment of a lost world, a physical connection to an ecosystem that vanished long before modern civilization appeared. For rock hunters and collectors, there are several clues worth knowing. Look for fossil-bearing formations, particularly in regions famous for ammonite deposits. Pay attention to spiral shell patterns. Watch for iridescent flashes of red, green, blue, or gold appearing across the surface. And remember that many valuable pieces don't initially resemble gemstones at all. They resemble fossils. That's exactly why they are so often overlooked. Most people searching for gemstones expect crystals. They don't expect ancient life. And that's what makes Ammolite so unusual. It blurs the line between fossil and gemstone, between biology and geology, between life and deep time. But while Ammolite became valuable because it survived for millions of years, the next gemstone owes its reputation to something far more subtle, a tiny detail so small that many people never notice it. Yet once seen, it's impossible to forget. Number 6, Chrysoberyl cat's eye. Experienced gem collectors often look for something most people never notice. Not a bright color, not a dramatic crystal, not a perfect shape, just a single line, a thin streak of light. Because sometimes that one detail can transform an ordinary-looking stone into something highly sought after. And few gemstones demonstrate that better than Chrysoberyl cat's eye. At first glance, many specimens seem surprisingly unimpressive. Some are cloudy, some are brownish, others appear gray-green and muted. Placed beside a vibrant sapphire or a brilliant ruby, most people would walk past them without a second thought. Nothing about them demands attention until the light moves. Then something extraordinary happens. A narrow band of light appears across the surface, bright, sharp, almost perfectly straight. As the stone turns, the band moves with it, gliding smoothly from side to side, like the watchful eye of a cat tracking movement in the dark. The effect is so distinctive that collectors gave it a name long ago, cat's eye, and for experienced gem hunters, spotting that line can be a thrilling moment, because not all cat's eye stones are equal. Many minerals can display similar effects, but when that phenomenon appears in Chrysoberyl, collectors pay attention, very close attention. The secret lies deep inside the stone. Tiny, needle-like inclusions align in a specific way, interacting with light to create the moving band. Without those inclusions, the effect disappears. Without the proper cut, the effect weakens. Without the right lighting, many people never notice it at all. That's what makes Chrysoberyl cat's eye so fascinating. Its most valuable feature isn't obvious. It rewards observation, patience, experience. For rock hunters and collectors, that lesson can be incredibly important. The most significant clue is not always the largest one. Sometimes it's the smallest, a subtle color shift, an unusual reflection, a tiny feature that everyone else ignores. If you're examining a potential cat's eye specimen, shine a focused light across its surface and slowly rotate the stone. Look for a sharp, continuous line rather than a vague glow. The stronger and more defined the band appears, the more interesting the specimen may become. And that's why collectors often move differently from everyone else. While most people search for things that stand out immediately, experienced eyes search for clues, small clues, hidden clues, the kinds of details that reveal themselves only to someone willing to slow down and look carefully. Because extraordinary discoveries are not always hidden. Sometimes they're visible the entire time. The difference is knowing what to look for. But if Chrysoberyl cat's eye reveals its secret through a single line of light, the next gemstone performs something even more astonishing. Because under one light source, it can appear green. Under another, it can appear red. And the transformation is real. Number 5. Alexandrite. Imagine holding a gemstone in your hand. It's green, not slightly green, clearly green. You turn it under the sunlight. Still green. Nothing unusual, nothing mysterious. Then you walk into a room illuminated by warm indoor light. You glance down at the same stone, and suddenly it appears red. Not greenish red, not slightly different. Red, as if someone secretly switched it for an entirely different gemstone. That moment has surprised collectors for generations. Because Alexandrite doesn't simply sparkle, it transforms. And unlike a magician's trick, the transformation is completely real. The first time many people witness a high-quality Alexandrite changing color, the reaction is almost always the same: disbelief. The brain immediately searches for an explanation. Maybe it's a reflection, maybe it's the lighting, maybe it's an illusion. But the stone keeps changing. Green in daylight, red or purplish red under warmer light sources, again and again, as if nature somehow forgot to follow its own rules. And that's what makes Alexandrite one of the most fascinating gemstones ever discovered. Most gemstones reveal a single identity. Alexandrite reveals two. The secret lies deep within its crystal structure. Tiny traces of chromium interact with different wavelengths of light in a highly unusual way, allowing the stone to display dramatically different colors depending on the environment. The result is so striking that collectors often describe Alexandrite as an emerald by day and a ruby by night. And unlike many legends in the gemstone world, this one can actually be seen with your own eyes. For collectors, strong color change is everything. The more dramatic the transformation, the more desirable the stone becomes. A specimen that shifts only slightly may attract interest. A specimen that appears to completely change personality can become something truly special. If you're examining a potential Alexandrite, observe it under multiple light sources. Natural daylight is essential. Warm indoor lighting is equally important. The greater the contrast between the two appearances, the more remarkable the stone may be. And that's where Alexandrite becomes something more than a rare gemstone. It becomes a reminder that appearances are often tied to circumstances. Change the environment, change the light. And something familiar can suddenly become extraordinary. But even Alexandrite eventually reveals its secret once the lighting changes. The next gemstone is different, because its mystery has nothing to do with color, light, or transformation. Its value comes from something far rarer: the fact that most people have never even heard its name. Number 4. Benitoite. Millions of Americans can recognize a diamond. Many can identify a ruby. Some can even recognize a sapphire. But one of the rarest gemstones ever discovered in the United States remains almost completely unknown. Its name is Benitoite, and that raises an interesting question. How can something extraordinarily rare remain hidden in plain sight? After all, people tend to assume that important things become famous. The most successful athletes become household names. The most valuable companies dominate headlines. The most celebrated gemstones appear in advertisements, museums, and jewelry stores around the world. That seems logical. If something is truly special, surely everyone would know about it. But Benitoite quietly challenges that assumption. Discovered in California in the early 20th century, Benitoite quickly attracted attention among gemologists for its remarkable beauty and rarity. Yet outside specialist circles, it never achieved the recognition enjoyed by diamonds, rubies, emeralds, or sapphires. And that makes its story surprisingly unusual. Because rarity and popularity are not the same thing. In fact, they often move in opposite directions. Many famous gemstones became famous because large numbers of people could eventually buy them. Benitoite never had that advantage. Gem quality material is exceptionally scarce. Significant deposits are extremely limited. And unlike many gemstones found across multiple countries, benitoite is closely associated with a single region of California. Nature created it under such specific geological conditions that finding another major source has proven extraordinarily difficult. That scarcity helped make benitoite highly desirable among serious collectors. Yet it also contributed to its anonymity. Most people simply never encounter it. They never see it in jewelry stores. They never hear about it in advertisements. And as a result, they never learn its name. For collectors, that's part of the appeal. Owning benitoite often feels like belonging to a small club that knows something the rest of the world overlooked. If you're examining a potential specimen, look for rich blue coloration that can sometimes resemble sapphire. Pay attention to crystal shapes and unusual brilliance. And remember that location matters. California remains the heart of benitoite's story. What makes this gemstone fascinating isn't just its rarity, it's the gap between how extraordinary it is and how few people know it exists. In a world where attention often determines value, benitoite serves as a reminder that some treasures remain hidden not because they're impossible to find, but because almost nobody is looking. And while benitoite is rare because few people know about it, the next gemstone is rare for a far more dramatic reason. Nature itself almost never creates it, which is exactly why collectors consider it one of the most extraordinary discoveries in the gemstone world. Number 3. Red beryl. Some gemstones are difficult to find. Red beryl belongs in an entirely different category. Imagine spending years searching for rare gemstones, traveling through mining regions, examining thousands of specimens, learning to recognize the subtle signs that most people miss, and still never seeing a single red beryl. For many collectors, that isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's reality, because red beryl is so uncommon that even experienced gem enthusiasts may go their entire lives without encountering a fine specimen in person. And that's what makes its story so remarkable. At first glance, red beryl doesn't seem like it should be this rare. Its color is beautiful. Its crystals can be striking. But nothing about its appearance immediately explains why collectors speak about it with such fascination. The answer lies deep beneath the Earth's surface. Red beryl formed under an extraordinarily specific combination of geological conditions: the right minerals, the right temperature, the right pressure, the right volcanic environment. Nature had to get almost everything exactly right, and nature rarely does that. As a result, significant gem-quality material is exceptionally scarce. Not uncommon, not difficult, scarce. The kind of scarcity that changes the way collectors think. Most gemstones become valuable because many people want them. Red beryl became valuable because so few examples exist in the first place. That distinction matters. A diamond may be famous, a ruby may be admired, but rarity operates according to its own rules. And red beryl sits in a category that few gemstones ever reach. For collectors, finding a genuine specimen can feel less like making a purchase and more like securing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That's why discussions about red beryl often focus on availability before beauty, before color, before size. The first question is usually much simpler. Can one even be found? If you're examining a potential specimen, pay attention to vivid red coloration and crystal habits associated with known source regions. Location matters enormously. In fact, part of what makes red beryl so extraordinary is how limited its occurrence has been throughout geological history. Nature simply doesn't produce much of it, and perhaps that's the most fascinating lesson hidden inside this gemstone. People often assume rarity means something is hard to acquire. Red beryl suggests something far more extreme. Sometimes rarity means something barely exists at all, which brings us to the next gemstone. A stone whose story isn't about scarcity alone, it's about discovery itself. Because for years, its existence challenged what scientists thought they knew about the mineral world. Number 2. Painite. There is a common assumption that many people never question. The world has already been discovered. The maps have been drawn. The mountains have been climbed. The minerals have been cataloged. And whatever remains unknown must be hidden in the deepest oceans or on distant planets. It sounds reasonable. After all, modern science has spent centuries studying the Earth. Millions of rock samples have been analyzed. Entire mountain ranges have been explored. Yet every so often, nature delivers a reminder that certainty can be surprisingly fragile. Painite is one of those reminders. At first glance, it doesn't look like a revolutionary discovery. Many specimens appear dark. Some seem almost ordinary. Others resemble minerals that would attract little attention outside specialist collections. Nothing about its appearance immediately suggests that it would challenge assumptions about what humanity knows. And yet that is exactly what happened. When painite was first identified, it was unlike anything scientists had encountered before. Its composition was unusual. Its occurrence was extraordinarily limited. And for years, confirmed specimens were so scarce that researchers had very little material to study. The gemstone quickly developed a reputation that extended far beyond collecting circles. It became a symbol of something larger. The realization that even in an age of satellites, laboratories, and advanced geological surveys, the Earth could still produce surprises. That idea is what makes painite so fascinating. Not merely its rarity, but what its rarity revealed. People often imagine scientific knowledge as a finished book, a completed story, a puzzle with only a few missing pieces. Reality looks very different. Science is constantly evolving. New discoveries appear. Old assumptions change. Things once considered impossible become accepted facts. Painite became one of those moments, a reminder that the natural world is far more complex than any database, map, or textbook. For collectors, painite represents rarity. For geologists, it represents discovery. But for everyone else, it represents possibility. The possibility that remarkable things still exist beyond the boundaries of what we currently understand. If you're examining an unusual mineral specimen, curiosity can be one of the most valuable tools you possess. Many important discoveries begin the same way. Someone notices something unusual. Someone asks a question. Someone decides to investigate further rather than walk away. And that's exactly why painite belongs near the top of this list. Because its story isn't really about a gemstone. It's about the fact that discovery is still happening. Even now. Even in places people believe have already been explored. But if painite reminds us that the world still holds secrets, the final gemstone takes that idea one step further. Because some discoveries remain hidden, not because they are impossible to find, but because almost nobody knows they exist at all. Number 1. Musgravite. Most people cannot search for something they don't know exists. It sounds obvious. But that simple idea may explain why some of the world's most extraordinary discoveries remain hidden for so long. Not because they're locked away, not because they're impossible to find, but because attention is focused somewhere else. And few gemstones illustrate that reality better than musgravite. By now you've seen rocks mistaken for glass, stones hiding fire-like colors, gemstones that change color, ancient fossils transformed into treasure. Minerals so rare that collectors spend years searching for them. But musgravite occupies a different category entirely. Its story is not about appearance. Its story is not about optical effects. Its story is not even primarily about rarity. Its story is about awareness. Or more accurately, the lack of it. Most people have never heard the name musgravite. Walk through a shopping mall, visit a jewelry store, ask random people on the street. The overwhelming majority will have no idea what it is. And that is precisely what makes it so fascinating. Because despite its obscurity, musgravite is considered one of the most remarkable gemstones ever discovered. It exists at the intersection of rarity, geology, and human attention. A place where something can possess extraordinary value while remaining almost completely absent from public awareness. That creates a remarkable paradox. People often assume that important things become famous, that valuable things attract attention, that extraordinary discoveries naturally rise to the surface. But history repeatedly proves otherwise. Ideas go unnoticed. Opportunities go overlooked. Discoveries remain hidden in plain sight, not because they lack significance, because few people recognize them. Musgravite embodies that principle perfectly. For collectors fortunate enough to encounter one, the gemstone represents far more than scarcity. It represents the gap between reality and perception, between what exists and what is recognized, between true value and public awareness. And perhaps that is the most important lesson hidden anywhere in this countdown. Every stone on this list challenged first impressions. Moldavite looked like broken glass. Fire agate resembled rusty gravel. Labradorite appeared dull and lifeless. Ammolite seemed like an ordinary fossil. Again and again, extraordinary value existed behind ordinary appearances. Musgravite simply takes that lesson to its final conclusion. Sometimes the rarest treasures are not hidden by distance. Sometimes they are hidden by familiarity, by assumptions, by lack of awareness. And that raises one final question. How many remarkable things exist in the world today, not just gemstones, but ideas, opportunities, discoveries, and even people, that remain overlooked simply because few recognize their value? Perhaps the greatest treasures have never been hidden at all. Perhaps they have simply never been noticed. And that may be the most extraordinary discovery of all. None of the rocks on this list look valuable at first glance. Some looked like broken glass. Others resembled gravel, fossils, or ordinary stones that most people would never notice. Yet each one revealed the same lesson. Value doesn't always look valuable. Sometimes the rarest discoveries are overlooked not because they're hidden, but because they're misunderstood. So before dismissing something as ordinary, it may be worth taking a closer look. Which rock surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more fascinating stories from the world of gemstones. Because sometimes the most extraordinary treasures are hiding in plain sight.